Alrighty, testing to make sure everything is good to go. As you can tell, I'm in the middle of traveling. I am not at my usual filming space, but I figured this was an important video to make while I was on the go. So that's essentially the story of this respective video. Hi everyone, my name is Rose, also known as TA Summers. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a bookish discussion video related to a specific opinion piece that I came across and had me seeing red. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, like it had me heated, like from the very moment that I first heard about it to the time that I read through it, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about a lot of different issues in this respective video. I'm going to try to streamline it as best I can. I think the best way to talk about this respective topic, which is going to be Black boys in YA fantasy, and Black boys in fantasy, reading fantasy specifically, is to kind of go point by point through this respective article. So I'm going to have this screen up that you see here, and then I'm also going to be screen recording. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin, and you'll see why it had me heated as we get deeper into the discussion. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. So let me get this going. I want to make sure that I capture everything on the screen here before I start recording. Okay, so you should be seeing in the background an article which is titled Black Boys in Fantasy. This is by creator Michael, who is the leader of Left Unread, which is a podcast and also a TikTok that he manages. And he's interviewed several prominent Black authors. So he's had a voice in the community for quite some time in terms of things, and has had meaningful conversations with respective authors. So this is not a video meant to disrespect the work that Michael is doing, but I think you'll see in terms of the points and the questions that I ask when I talk about this respective article, how irresponsible it is in terms of some of the things that he says and why, and even not why, like, because there's no explanation given or solutions really given other than some opinion points that are made within the article. So let's go through this line by line and go ahead and get started. So the title of this respective article is Black Boys in Fantasy. And so Michael says, there's a large conversation happening about the lack of representation for boys in YA, and I want to offer my thoughts on why that problem exists and how to fix it in joy. And you can see the infographic here where it says, where are Black boys? Starts off by saying, if you aren't aware, there's currently a large conversation happening on threads about male representation in YA fantasy, and as expected, I've had some thoughts. Just to be clear, I'm not on threads, so I have only seen this conversation in other types of social media. So I've seen it on Twitter, I've seen it sporadically on Tumblr and other places, and definitely I've seen like hints of it on Bluesky, which I am a part of and more prominently like these days, other than Twitter. So just FYI. So I've heard about this in spaces, but I don't know about the specific convo thread that is on threads right now. So just FYI. Before we really dive into this, it is important to note where this conversation really started, because while it's taken off and grown from what was originally being discussed, as best I can tell, this conversation originated with author Ladarian Ims, who's author of Blood at the Root, and a discussion about the lack of Black boy representation in YA fantasy. And that's definitely an important point to make, because that's definitely a problem. Like, a lot of us see it, like, even as a prominent reader, I've definitely seen that specifically in YA fantasy, like a problem with the lack of Black boy representation. This is not saying that Black authors or authors of color aren't writing Black boys like in their fantasy, but those titles are not being promoted the way that they should be in terms of things. or it's just a lack thereof, collectively speaking, when we're having this discussion about representation. So that's a fair point to make. And I think it's not just Ladarian Williams who pointed this out. Also, I think it was Ryan Douglas, who is the author of The Taking of Jake Livingston, also had this discussion before as well, in terms of a lack of Black boy representation in YA horror, sci-fi, fantasy, things like that. So definitely there's a conversation there, and definitely it's worth talking about. But just want to make that note very clear. Since then, it has grown into a conversation about male representation altogether, and naturally, many readers are upset by the idea that male representation is even a concern in a world where women are not only less representative, but actively marginalized in every space. But it is important to note that a conversation about Black male representation is notably different than a conversation about male representation. That's true because of marginalized communities. You definitely want to have that conversation in terms of things. So I definitely am on board with this so far, deceptively so, but so far, like, I get the point. With that said, I think that objection is still an important one, and I want to talk about it. Let's go ahead and scroll down. First and most notably, it's worth discussing that one of the reasons women strongly lead the YA genre is because the industry often pushes women into the genre. I don't know if I would agree with that in terms of the term push. It's more like mislabeling in terms of like that kind of thing. It's a combination of both pushing and mislabeling in terms of YA, because of YA being so prominent, and then also this kind of this labeling of a lot of women authors across the spectrum, like whether you're BIPOC or not. There is a push like for and a push of perception for women writing YA, and that is a problem in terms of things, because there are so many women who are writing adult or middle grade or children's just across the range from that, and they should be recognized for the age range that they write for. And then I also want to correct what Michael is saying here. YA is not a genre. YA is not a genre. It is an age range. So I want to make that point very clear, because a lot of people try to mislabel YA as a specific genre. Like that's not the case. Genres are more like action, adventure, fantasy, sci-fi, humor, comedic, things like that. Those are genres. YA is an age range, and so under that age range is a multitude of different genres that you can seek out and find, but it is specifically an age range, the category. So I just want to make that correction as well. Now, I know that the conversation everyone else is having about why there aren't more male protagonists in YA, but that's not what I want to talk about, because the answer is simple to me. It is because boys don't read YA. That is not true. That is not true right off the bat. Yes, we're talking in generalities, but I don't agree with that at all. I think there are a large amount of boys who are readers who do read YA, among other things, if you can get them to be interested in a specific genre space. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later in terms of things, because yeah, that misses, and that generality, it does not stick, and that is not true. And the reason for that is, in my opinion, because they don't like girls. His opinion is wrong. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to tell you that right now. His opinion is completely wrong. That's throwing a lot of Black boy YA readers under the bus. That is it rarely, in my experience, as well as the experience of other people, especially librarians, there's a lot of boys who do read YA, if you can find a specific type of book that appeals to them in terms of things, but it's not because they don't like girls or they don't like female authors. I'm like, I don't even know where he got that from. I don't know. And that made me mad when I first, I'm like, just no, absolutely not. Where are you getting that information from, and from who is what I want to ask. I know that's not where you all thought this article was going, but stick it out with me. I was tempted to just like skip out of this article just from that. I was like, no, but let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's be honest. What would happen to the fantasy genre if it suddenly became a predominantly black space? White readers would find a different genre to read. They would stick to their "we can't relate" excuses and search for a genre that caters to their identity. And I think that is what is largely what is happening to the YA genre. YA is not a genre. That's another thing too. And then also, that's a generalization that's very dangerous, because what type of fantasy are you talking about in terms of things where it suddenly becomes black? Because there's a lot of different subgenres in fantasy, and we already have like even though some of these spaces are not as popular or as talked about, there is a market for different authors of color, BIPOC, who can write in specific genres. It may be that depending on the type of subgenre you're talking about, it may be a dominated white space, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the collective fantasy genre becomes like tailored to a certain group. So I don't agree with that either, because you think about a lot of different fantasy subgenres, such as urban fantasy or epic fantasy. So it begs the question in terms of what type of fantasy are you talking about specifically, in terms of like what becomes more dominant, and in terms of who gets to tell the story, and in terms of what context and what niches and things like that. So there's a complication with that. That's a generalization that's kind of very dangerous to go into, because it's painting a very wide brush in terms of things. So yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I don't want to get too much on soapbox because we would be here all night. So I'll just leave it at that. And I think that's what is largely happening to the YA genre. Again, YA is not a genre. Female authors are dominating space, and male readers are not willing to engage with them. That's not true. Because boy or wizard author, for example, that kind of proves the point right there, like in terms of things. Do you really think there aren't male boys across the spectrum, including black boys, who aren't into the boy wizard? I'm not going to talk about it in terms of things, because I don't talk about that author on this channel in terms of things, and most people know why. But there's a point to make where that argument gets shut down right there, because it's like, we know who the author is, and that argument is proven to be false. And also, if you think about manga readers in terms of things, there are a lot of female mangaka who write, and you have a lot of like boys who read manga that are written by women. So how would you say, in terms of stuff that proves his point wrong there? Like in terms of like the popularity of manga and different manga series in terms of things. Like you could talk about so many different people who grew up reading stuff like Inuyasha or Ranma 1/2 or Sailor Moon, or like just a lot of different classic manga are written by female mangaka. So if you're talking about fantasy in terms of things, that proves your point wrong. So I'll leave it there for right now. But that's a large discussion, and that's a broad generalization that's proven false just by thinking about different examples of female writers who have appealed to boys and also black boys. So if you know a bunch of teenagers, like I've had the the pleasure of being in a lot of spaces in terms of things, and even in the work that I've done in the past where I've worked with kids, in terms of hearing casual conversations about what they read and what they love in terms of things. And I don't know where Michael is getting his argument here from. Even with the librarians that I talk to who currently work in the space, they say that this subject about female writers writing different things and not appealing to boys, that conversation barely comes up in terms of whether or not the author is male or female. They're usually asking, what does this book contain? Does it contain dragons? Does it contain an adventure that the main character goes on? Does it contain like a romance? Does it not contain romance? Is it just a platonic friendship between two people, lifelong friendship, things like that? There's different elements that they ask about. It's rarely ever a conversation where the boy who is asking the questions whether it's a male or female author. Is usually, what is the book about, and does it have this particular topic or this particular subject matter or genre in terms of things. So it's a lot. There's a lot of assumptions going into that. So let's keep on going with that. Now, I said earlier that it was important for us to note that a conversation about black male representation and a conversation about male representation are totally different. Okay, notably different. Okay, I get that. I stand by that statement. But I also want to be clear that this problem remains the same for marginalized readers. Instead of rushing to the YA is not a genre, okay? Age group. To devour the black stories flooding the genre, a lot of black men and black boys are abandoning the genre because they don't see themselves. And how don't you? I don't. With a market in terms of things where we have authors who are notably loved, black authors, and I'm not going to go into authors who write outside of fantasy, but if you look at Mark Giles, if you look at Jason A. Reynolds, if you look at the Ladarian Williams, if you look at the work of Ryan Douglas, for example, these are authors who have made their mark in terms of writing for boys, black boys, who are, in their circles, they're household names, but they could always use more exposure in terms of things. They're out here doing the work, but they're not getting recognized at the point where they should be. And that's a fight that all of us are trying to do. If you're a marginalized creator, if you're a marginalized person like myself even, I look for those types of books and stories to be able to promote to other people, to be able to say, hey, look at this. This is something that you can recommend to your teenager who reads YA, and say, hey, here's representation. Here's an interesting story to be able to pick up, and this is giving black boy representation in terms of things. So we look for those kinds of things. And it's not so much that they don't see themselves. We're not marketing, and publishing is not doing a great job with this either in terms of things. So I'm going to call out the publishing industry, the traditional publishing industry specifically, in terms of them not doing enough to be able to platform their black authors and black boy stories. In terms of things, because there could be a lot more work done to be able to platform the stories that are out there. I feel like there's a generalization that's saying that black men and black boys are abandoning the genre because they don't see themselves. I think it's a matter of marketing, and I also think that it's also the type of stories that are being marketed in terms of things. Because if we're talking about black boys, and we ask the question in terms of what do black boys what kinds of stories they'd like to see. Sometimes it's not just about seeing themselves, although that's definitely important, Sometimes it's looking at the specific things that they are into in terms of the kinds of stories they want to pick up. And I think it's important to be able to keep that in mind and also make sure that the quality of the stories are there in terms of things, having those action adventure things, having a lot of the things that they're saying, hey, this is the kind of story that I want to read. So I think there needs to be an active participation in terms of being able to say, hey, how can we encourage Black boys to be able to pick up YA if that's they want to pick up, and encouraging those teen readers and being able to make sure that they have the right books in their hands that they really want to be able to read. So that's my spiel on that. I don't want to get too off topic and go too far like ahead of this respective discussion, but let me continue. I felt incredibly represented by books like Legend Born, Tracy Deonn, and Gilded Ones, Naima Forna. Bree Matthews' Legend Born spoke to the piece of me that has spent my entire life fighting for my place at tables where only white people were supposed to take a seat. So to be fair, like I did like the first book of Legend Born. I need to write a proper review, and it has been a while since I've that I've read Legend Born, so you can expect me to do a rereading on the channel to be able to talk about that book, and also like in terms of specific things that are like appeal to me, and other things that I could critique in terms of things about it. But we'll leave that discussion where it is. But Michael is talking about how much Legend Born meant to him, so, which that's cool. That's cool. Like I'm glad he was able to see himself in Bree. That's great. And Decca, Gilded Ones, reminded me of just how powerful I am, regardless of how the world around me just tries to diminish me, and the inheritance of strength and creativity I inherited from my ancestors. I have not read the Gilded Ones yet, but I have all 3 books in that respective series, and I am going to review them for the channel. So I'm putting a pin in it, and I'll talk about those books when I get the opportunity to be able to pick them up. But that's great that he was able to see himself in both the Legend Born series so far, as well as the Gilded Ones, which I believe is a completed series. Legend Born is not complete yet. I think the 3rd book has yet to come out, and I think there may be more books to come for Legend Born. I don't know yet. I've only read the 1st book. I have not read Bloodmarked yet. So I'm hoping to be able to read the Legend Born series from the beginning and kind of like do a complete read of that and a complete review of that. But good on him in terms of finding books that appeal to him. And don't even get me started about the way I felt seen and spoken for in books like Ray Bearer, Jordan and Foucault, where a young girl with no real identity or family is forced to choose between fighting for her family's turn at power or for actual liberation for everyone, which that's cool. I have not read all of Ray Bearer, and I do want to be able to read that respective duology and give a review for that on the channel as well. So we'll get to that eventually. Like I'll post separate videos for my reviews on those respective books. So let's keep on going. Look, I see the need for Black boy representation, and I think it is something we should fight for. Black boys need to feel seen and heard and represented. Yes, I agree with that. Black boys and men have struggles, needs, dreams, and fears that are very specific to us, and those realities deserve their time on the page. I'm with him on that. Okay. In fact, society would be enriched by us being represented on the page, but we also need to be honest about the amount of representation that we are throwing away because of our collective hatred of the Black girl. Where's that coming from? Because that is a very harmful statement to make. Black men and boys have their own agency, as do Black women and girls. Why is Michael conflating the two here is one of the main things that I had to question with respect to this particular story, this respective article. I don't understand that. And I think that's a very harmful thing to do, to try to define the agency, make the agency of Black men and boys dependent on Black women and girls that's a dicey line. And it does not serve well either community. It does not serve well either community at all in terms of things, because, but let me put a pin on that, because he later clarifies other things in here, but that's a problematic viewpoint to have, and I'll get into what later. Aside from the fact that he's completely disregarding that there's separate agencies for black men, black boys, black girls, black women. Yeah, respect the agency and the voices of those groups as they are, without being defined by the other groups in terms of things. That doesn't fly with me. That doesn't fly with me. And that is not just black boys, that is everyone. Black girls exist at the intersection of multiple marginalizations. Yes, that's true, but not in the way that he's making this argument. They represent the struggles and hopes of most marginalized people. They understand racial oppression and gender oppression. They are masculinized, sexualized, thrown away, possessed, abused, and mistreated. That is true. That is true. I'm not arguing that either, but the way that he's tying it into this conversation is a little, it's a false equivalence. So let me continue. And their fight for liberation is one that speaks for so many of us, yet we collectively refuse to see them. So he's making a point of black women and girls in terms of not being seen, which I agree that's an important point on its own. But to define that struggle, to define that issue as contingent upon the representation of black boys does not make sense. It's a false equivalence, and it's tying together two like separate issues all in one thing that doesn't serve well any of the communities that he's trying to talk about. Is essentially, and I have a massive problem with that kind of equivalence being made in terms of things, because the thing about it is, and it's what I talked about with respect to agency, you want to respect the agency of groups, different groups of people on their own, to be able to speak for themselves. It's not necessarily a task for one group to speak collectively of a whole entire thing, where there are specific nuances and specific different things that make us different and make us unique. You can't have that false equivalence in there. That doesn't work. That doesn't work at all. Let me continue. And yet we collectively refuse to see them, and I think that's a tragedy. Not just because it robs us of important insight into our collective needs and fight for freedom, but also because it robs us of the necessary solidarity for us all to share the same spaces and conversations. Do I want more black boys on the page? Yes, and I'm proudly an advocate for black male authors. But I also want us to tackle this much deeper issue. The reason that the door isn't more open to more black male authors in this genre is because we, as a reader base, have seen women at the center and chosen to abandon it rather than share space with them. It isn't that there is a deeper hatred of black men than black women. It isn't even that people are hesitant to read black male authors. It is that the black boy has been taught that solidarity with the black girl is too much to ask for. Again, where is he getting this from, and why is he collectively putting black boys who read YA and throwing them under the bus, is my question. Because I can tell you not all black boy YA readers feel that way. It feels like a collective type of assignment, and there's no standing on that in terms of things. There's no receipts to what he's saying right here in terms of this being a collective. Like it's a wide brush that he's painting on black boys who read YA. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying that black boys are not underrepresented. They are. They most definitely are. And I'm not saying that it is wrong for black men boys to want more representation in genre. Yeah, but I am challenging the reason that we don't have it. I don't think that female readers are the reason black boys are not being represented in the YA genre. I think male readers are, and it's something to work on. Maybe, just maybe, the answer to this problem isn't to fight with women, but to champion them, especially black women. As for the white boys, men, let's be for real. And that was the end of the article, I believe. Let's see. But, oh boy. Let me go ahead and end this part of the video because I think that's the end of the article, and we're just going to have a discussion. So I'm going to be honest with y'all, that article was kind of all over the place in terms of a lot of the assumptions that it makes with respect to black boys reading YA, and specifically black boys reading YA fantasy. It felt like there were a lot of false equivalences, generalizations, and things that really weren't a part of a focused argument in terms of things like Michael addressed a number of different issues in this respective article, which a lot of it were good points based on the arguments that he had cited from where he had referred to conversations that Ladarian Williams, for example, have had. But at the same time, it was like he conflated a lot of other separate issues into one thing and tried to make that the reason that black boys don't read YA or black boys don't read YA fantasy. And I think that missed the mark completely in terms of things. So I talked a little bit about like some of the specific points that where I thought he was wrong in the duration of the respective article, but I'm going to do kind of a summary of things why this article was very, very harmful. So first of all, this article is very, very harmful in the way it throws black boy readers who read YA collectively, and even including black boys who read YA fantasy under the bus. Because the thing about it is, if you look at the habits of actual black boy readers who, in terms of what they pick up, in terms of things, I think you'll find a very different story in terms of what they pick up. And one of the reasons why manga is as popular as it is in terms of things is because of the types of topics and features that they have of it. It's not limited to male and female authors. It is not limited to male or female authors in terms of why manga is popular, and why even black boys gravitate to that it's a non-issue. And also in terms of the way that he tries to conflate women authors as a reason that black boys don't pick up, that is completely not true. I can tell you the number of black boys who actually did like Legendborn from my local library. I can tell you about some of them who actually like a range of different things. So I wonder, and also, like I said, boy wizard, in terms of the problem is not female authors, and I don't even think that the female female authors being prominent in YA is the problem to black boys not picking up YA as readily. We can talk about different things if we actually examine, if you talk to the black boys that are in your community, if we do surveys, things where in terms of things where we're interviewing black boys, it's like, what are the types of stories you'd like to see? What are the things that are being marketed towards them in terms of things? And I'll say this, I think in terms, I think representation for black boys in YA and including YA fantasy is very important. Being able to see themselves, the whole argument of sliding glass doors, and windows, that collective thing, it's important for so many different marginalized readers to be able to have that experience and being able to see themselves as well as other people. But trying to limit that to being content with just, or trying to assign a collective blame to Black boys supposedly not picking up female authors, or female authors dominating the space, that's a false equivalence. That's a false equivalence, and it does not do well to either female authors, Black female authors, Black male authors, or Black boys who want to be able to pick up more books to read. It does not serve any of those communities that I mentioned and beyond. It does not, that kind of collective assignment and collective blaming does not work. And that is not the reason. I firmly disagree with Michael's central thesis on that. It does not work. So let's talk about what, and the other thing about this article that really got under my skin in terms of things is that he didn't really offer any kind of real solutions here in terms of how to appeal more to Black boys who want specific stories, including, like representation in YA and being able to read more YA, other than putting a false blame on them, a collective assignment, collective blaming, and that's not true. So let's talk about some actual issues in terms of why we have an issue. Like, if you actually know people in your communities in terms of things, and you have people who are on the ground talking to boys who are reading YA, especially Black boys who are reading YA, or like the subgenres that are within the YA space, you have to ask yourself what topics are in the range of genres that are within YA. What specific books are they picking up? What types of topics are appealing to them? And are they being able to see more of themselves in that space, and being able to have and options to choose from that are quality stories in terms of things, and not just in a single lens of representation or a single lens of a type of story. So that's something that's important to be able to think about when you're thinking about appealing to different audiences within the YA space. Like, you want to be able to, within YA, and this is a collective thing to be able to think about, whether you're looking at what appeals in middle grade, children's, YA, adult spaces. What are the type of stories that appeal, and making sure that these stories are not written in a monolith, because that's also a thing that's really a problem in terms of things. So making sure that there's a range of stories to be able to pick up, assessing what types of elements and things about a particular genre within YA that are appealing to Black boys, and making sure that they have access to those stories in addition to representation. So that's something to be able to know when you're actually looking to appeal to Black boy readers in YA. That's the questions you should be asking in terms of things, instead of assigning collective blame and putting the onus on women writers. It's not that I'm trying to laugh this off, because otherwise I might start just really being mad, because it's such a false equivalence, and it does a lot of harm. It does a lot of harm to have that collective assignment and blame, and to put that towards a young group of readers. I don't agree with that at all. Now, I've talked about in terms of the ways that you can do it in terms of things. I think for the why and what to do about it in terms of being able to assess that and deliver to this respective audience what other things can we ask ourselves the question on in terms of how, a black, I feel like there's like another discussion to be had in terms of representation for black boys in YA, especially in YA fantasy. And there were points that Michael touched upon in terms of the conversations that he was able to pick up from, but the false equivalence in here kind of overrides that issue, and he doesn't really give that many solutions in terms of things. So I think part of the solution is to be able to look at the literature that is out there, like look at black male authors, look at black female authors who are writing black boys as leading characters, being able to promote them is one solution, because they are out there, and that is the problem. The fact that there are these stories that are out there by these authors that are doing the work, that are not getting promoted enough in the traditional publishing space, and even in the indie publishing space, being able to look at authors who are there to be able to get those stories into the hands of black teen boys, whether it's in contemporary works, whether it's in fantasy, whether it's in other specific genres that are within YA, making sure those stories get to the audience they are intended for, and being able to say, hey, if there's a specific story that you like with this certain element, making sure that that is available and recommended to black boys who read YA. So I think that's one solution. That's one solution, and it sucks that he didn't even think about that particular that thing as a solution, and being able to talk about that. The other thing, I think, is being able to make sure there is a range of stories available for black teen boys or black boys who read YA, because being able to see a range of different stories and not just have a monolith, one-dimensional representation of what these characters are in terms of things, because a lot of times, and this has been a complaint for a while in terms of the representation of black boys in a lot of popular titles, that they're portrayed in a certain way where and this is also a problem with respect to like how black folks are represented in popular YA literature, where it's either we're written to a specific plot point and featured only in a one-dimensional space, or they're conveniently moved off screen or killed off, or some other type of villainization that is done to the community that does a lot of harm. Creating dimensional characters, creating dimensional black boys who have that range of because one of the things that I took with me from Jason Reynolds, who recently wrote 24 Seconds from Now, Love Story, is looking at the rich inner details of the black boy's experience and being able to make sure that is represented on page. And that, I feel like that's true collectively in YA, whether it's in YA fantasy or whether it's in the collective subgenres that are within YA. I think that's important to be able to showcase black boys being able to be richly represented across a multitude of genres within YA. I think that's important. The other part of it is also making sure there's a range of stories where it's not just trauma related, or whether there's this vilification or hyper correcting, where you only have the representation of the soft black boy, of the of a black boy who has one sense of person, one type of personality, one type of dimension or range. There are so many stories that can be told from the perspective of black boys within YA that will appeal to Black boys who want to read YA, and those stories need to be put to the forefront, whether they have already been written or whether they have yet to be written, and marketed, and being able to pick them up in the traditional space as well as in the indie publishing space. I think it's important to be able to showcase a range so that young people, young black boys and Black teens can see not only themselves, but also being able to see a range of different stories, to be able to develop that empathy, and being able to develop, being able to see these richly described worlds and experiences and stuff like that within the mind of whether it's a Black male character or a range of different characters. It's being able to get those stories to this audience in terms of the appeal. So I think it's important to be able to keep that in mind and put these stories to the forefront, and making sure that they are quality stories and stories that this audience wants. And it is not tied to just one-dimensional thing of female authors, or it's not to the it's not to the false equivalence and collective assignment that Michael was doing in that article. So I think that's important to be able to refute and talk about. So that's my spiel in terms of talking about this respective article and a lot of the harm that it does. I feel like there was a lot in that article where there's a collective focus of assignment to the wrong things, and not seeing it as the multidimensional, not seeing it as a collective, doing collective assignment of a problem that exists in different spaces and assigning it to one central thing, which that's not it. That's not it at all. But yeah, I think this respective issue we can definitely have multiple videos and multiple discussions about being able to increase the representation of Black boys in YA, and being able to appeal to Black boys and teens in YA. I think there's a large discussion to be had in terms of being able to make sure that not only are they being represented and being able to see themselves and being able to see the stories that they want to, but also being able to not do what Michael did in this article and develop a false equivalence and collective blame, and throwing Black boy and Black teen readers on the bus. That's not it. That is not the solution. So I'll leave it at that. And I definitely want to be able to make more videos to talk about how to appeal to more readers in the YA space, and being able to have those kinds of discussions in a way that does not do harm. So I'll say it like that. So that is my spiel. That is my discussion of this respective video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification to be informed of when I post new videos. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next video.